The first tremor in the world of the British monarchy is never an earthquake. It is a silence. It is the conspicuous absence of a scheduled tweet, the non-appearance of a royal standard above a palace, the sudden, gut-wrenching void where certainty once stood. For the handful of pre-dawn staff in the labyrinthine corridors of Buckingham Palace, the tremor began at 03:45 with the internal ping of a secure messaging system. For the world, it began at 07 o'clock precisely with a push notification that shattered the morning calm. Breaking news: royal family emergency. Palace announces sudden action. The statement itself was a masterpiece of devastating minimalism, a skill at which the palace communications team has honed over centuries. It contained no detail, yet screamed volumes. It read, "Following a meeting of the Privy Council and consultations with senior members of the royal family, the palace announces that a period of regency will be instituted, effective immediately, under the provisions of the Regency Acts 1937 to 1953. His Majesty the King has temporarily delegated his official duties to the Council of State, headed by the Princess Royal and the Duke of Edinburgh. Further statements will be issued in due course. We ask that the family's privacy be respected at this time." In 68 words, the British Constitution was quietly, profoundly altered. A king had, effectively, stepped aside. The machine of state, a complex clockwork of tradition and power, had just been handed a new, untested key. This is the story of the 24 hours that led to that announcement, and the first 12 that followed. A story not just of crisis, but of the very soul of an institution fighting for its future. To understand the cataclysm, one must first appreciate the immense, invisible weight of the crown in the modern era. King Charles III, after a lifetime as the longest-serving heir apparent, had ascended the throne not as a young man eager to imprint his vision, but as an elder statesman carrying the accumulated baggage of public scrutiny, familial strife, and the Herculean task of modernizing an ancient institution. His reign began in the shadow of his beloved mother's epic tenure, and was immediately complicated by the ongoing, publicly waged tensions with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, which had peeled back the gilded curtain to reveal a family riven with private pain. The king's vision was for a slimmed-down monarchy, a more efficient, cost-effective, and relevant institution for the 21st century. But slimming down meant concentrating the burden on fewer shoulders. The relentless calendar of state openings, investitures, state visits, and ribbon cuttings was a marathon run at a sprinter's pace. The role is not merely ceremonial. It is a living symbol of the nation's continuity. There is no room for a bad day, for fatigue, for the simple human need to retreat. Behind the scenes, a small circle of senior aides had grown increasingly concerned. Sir Michael Sweeney, the king's private secretary, a man whose demeanor was as unflappable as his Savile Row suits were impeccable, had noted the subtle signs. The slight tremor in the king's hand as he held a speech, a rarity that was becoming less rare. The deepening lines of fatigue around his eyes that even the softest studio lighting could not conceal. A moment of uncharacteristic forgetfulness during a briefing on the upcoming state visit from the president of Brazil, where he momentarily confused the names of two key economic ministers. These were not, in themselves, causes for alarm. The king was, after all, a man in his mid-70s, carrying a burden that would buckle most. But they were data points. The crisis, when it came, was not a single dramatic event, a heart attack, a fall, but a culmination. It was a slow, insidious draining of the royal reservoir of stamina. The trigger was a week that would have been punishing for a person half his age. Monday, a day-long summit with the Prime Minister and the defense chiefs on a burgeoning international crisis in the South China Sea, requiring immense concentration and diplomatic nuance. Tuesday, a whirlwind tour of 3 cities in northern England, involving walkabouts and biting wind and rain. Wednesday, the annual diplomatic reception at Buckingham Palace, a 3-hour marathon of standing, shaking hands, and making polite, yet politically neutral conversation with over 150 ambassadors and their spouses. It was during this reception that Sir Michael saw it. The king was speaking with the French ambassador. His words were correct, his smile in place, but his eyes for a fleeting second lost their focus. He swayed, almost imperceptibly. A nearby equerry, trained to notice the unnoticeable, took a half-step forward. The king recovered instantly, making a self-deprecating joke about the uneven floorboards in the historic throne room. The moment passed. The ambassador laughed. The courtiers did not. Later that night, in the king's private apartments, the facade crumbled. Over a late supper of poached chicken and steamed vegetables, the king confessed to his wife, Queen Camilla, a profound and unsettling exhaustion. "It's not just tiredness, my dear," he was reported to have said. "It's a fog descending on my mind. I feel untethered." This private confession, relayed in confidence to Sir Michael by a deeply concerned queen, was the catalyst. The monarch's health was not just a private matter, it was a matter of state stability. The fog, the king described, was the one thing the crown could not afford: uncertainty. The summons went out after midnight. A secure, encrypted line carried the same terse message to a select few. Urgent meeting, the 1844 room, 2 a.m., use the privy purse door. The chosen location was significant. The 1844 room, within the palace's state apartments, is where truly confidential state business is conducted, far from the offices of the modern communications team. It was here that King George VI met with Winston Churchill during the darkest days of the Second World War. The attendees assembled in the ornate, hushed room, its walls lined with priceless art that seemed to watch the proceedings with silent judgment. Around the ornate malachite table sat Sir Michael Sweeney, the king's private secretary, who would act as chair; the Right Honorable Penelope Chatham, the Lord President of the Council and a veteran MP, representing the government; the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, the king's sister, known for her iron will, unparalleled work ethic, and fierce loyalty; the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward, the king's youngest brother, whose steady and unassuming nature had made him a trusted confidant; Dame Cynthia Croft, the cabinet secretary, the nation's most senior civil servant, there to advise on constitutional law and procedure; Sir James Mortimer, the king's personal physician. The atmosphere was thick with a tension that was part anxiety, part historical gravity. Sir Michael opened the meeting without preamble. "Your Royal Highnesses, Dame Cynthia, Lord President, thank you for coming at this unspeakable hour. We face a situation of the utmost delicacy. His Majesty is unwell, not with a condition that is at this moment life-threatening, but with one that gravely impacts his ability to perform the core functions of the sovereign. He is suffering from extreme physical and mental exhaustion, compounded by acute stress, resulting in transient cognitive lapses." Sir James Mortimer then provided the medical context. He described a condition bordering on a nervous breakdown, not in the hysterical sense, but in the sense of a complex system shutting down non-essential functions to preserve the core. The mind, Sir James explained, under this sort of unrelenting pressure, can simply buffer. It needs rest, not a week, not a month, a significant period of complete disengagement from stress and duty. To continue would be to risk a more public and more damaging collapse. It was Princess Anne who cut to the chase, her tone characteristically blunt. "What are the options, Michael? We can't very well put a 'gone fishing' sign on the palace gates." Dame Cynthia interjected, her voice the embodiment of the British Constitution itself, calm, precise, and unyielding. "The options are constitutionally delineated, ma'am. There is abdication, which is permanent, and which His Majesty has expressly ruled out. Then there are the Regency Acts. In the event that the sovereign is, by reason of infirmity of mind or body, incapable of performing the royal functions, those functions can be delegated to counselors of state." A complex discussion ensued. The usual counselors of state are the sovereign's spouse and the next 4 adults in the line of succession over the age of 21. This would include the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Sussex, Princess Beatrice, and Princess Eugenie. The inclusion of the Duke of Sussex, now a private citizen living in California, and a source of deep public controversy, was immediately deemed constitutionally untenable and practically unworkable. In the words of the Lord President, "We cannot have the daily business of the British Crown being conducted from Montecito," she stated flatly. "The security, logistical, and political implications are a nightmare." This was the constitutional knot. The meeting stretched into its second hour, with coffee being served from a silver pot. The solution, proposed by Dame Cynthia, was to use a more obscure provision of the Regency Acts, a letters patent approved by the sovereign and the Privy Council that could appoint specific councillors of state for a specific period, bypassing the standard order of succession. "We would propose a regency in all but name," she said. The king signed